Hello, insane children, and welcome to yet another crowd design discussion around Alice Asylum. This is episode number 11, and today we are going to be primarily discussing UX and UI, plus just how loud is Magus's keyboard. All of this and more. You can, of course, follow along on the Alice Asylum Wiki. The links to that are in the description below. That is at americanwiki.com/asylumwiki. We have posted up some very helpful images that you can take a look at. And hopefully Magus will mute his microphone so we don't continue to listen to the machine gun rattle of his keyboard. The first image up today is Console Controls V1. This is modeled after the PlayStation 4 controller reference, it is called. And I do want to stress really quickly, this is only a reference. This does not in any way indicate any sort of preference for PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, PC. We have said, and I will say again, that for Asylum, we are trying to target as many platforms as makes sense. I would very much like to target the platforms which are found most prevalent in the market. That means PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC, Nintendo. Let's not get started about Mac and Apple since there are so few of those in the market, but maybe we'll try. Anyway, so this is the UI UX conversation. One more side note is that I think most of us will agree that interface for console games is no longer an art. It is much more of a science. That is, that it's fairly well settled what works and what doesn't. So I think today's session is mainly meant to riff off of what's presented in Alex's controller references, and let's talk about what works for us, what doesn't, what things we like from the science, what things we don't like, but we're definitely not here to sort of reinvent the wheel. So if you do have comments and you do want to join in the discussion, you can drop that into the chat in text that is on our Patreon. You can also use the microphone emoji to indicate that you have a functional microphone, a functional brain, and something functional to contribute to the conversation. If you'd like to be a part of our Discord, do consider becoming a patron over at Patreon. Again, links to that are in the description below. And with that, I have finished my preamble. I will now give the floor to our mods to see if they have anything interesting they want to add. Magus, Flight Tribe are indicating bloody microphones. Go for it, guys.
We were just indicating what people would have to do in the chat if they wanted to speak up.
So it goes from having a mic to dabbing with the mic, then just dabbing.
That's right. You got to dab before you start that mic, and then you dab again.
Okay.
So,
all right.
I think there's not a dab button. Let's just agree on that.
This is true. Yeah, I think Magus also mentions that we will be going over a comment left on, not really a comment so much as a chapter, a screed, a manifesto.
TLDR.
A manifesto left by the Carbon Coast over on Patreon. He did leave quite a few thoughts and comments. But let's first jump into Console Controls V1. This is the first image at the top of the page where we are talking about UI UX. It's under the heading Controller Mapping on the Asylum Wiki under User Interface. So I just want to open it up to the floor to see what sort of initial comments everyone has on this.
Little Gerbroa, do you want to speak? I saw they put up a mic.
Let's go for it. Let's hear from Alexandra.
Let me find them.
I see they're typing a little something.
There we go. They should be unmuted now.
Are you unmuted, Alexandra?
Hello. Are you there?
Oh. Probably gotta re-unmute them. There you go.
Okay.
All right, let's see.
We are waiting for it.
And Tissa.
Okay, is there anybody else that has any comments they want to share on Console Controls V1?
Well, looking at it now, like you said at the beginning, these days things are they're getting standardized. There's sort of like less of your own personality that you can put into these things because people expect a certain thing. Camera on right stick, move on left stick, triggers for lock on, etc., etc. And yeah, just looking through controls V1 now, there seems to be a lot of standardized stuff in there. I would be kind of shocked if anyone had any massive problems with what has been listed here. So yeah, it's all looking pretty good from my perspective. But yeah, anyone else out there in Discord land have anything to say about what they're seeing?
Martin, I seem to recall you did have a bit of feedback on the movement plus weapon control or weapon selection. Kind of, there was a bit of a clash there.
Oh yeah, from the other thing last week. What was it now? He wanted to put the weapon select wheel on left D-pad, I believe it was. But oh yeah, there it is in the bottom left corner of the image. I see it now. Yeah, I don't think you can do that, especially if the game remains live as the wheel is up, which I think a lot of games do these days. They just go into like super slow motion,
and
which I think feels really good.
Yeah, I like the idea of going into a bit of slow motion. I think we have said that Alice, takes its sort of spiritual predecessor from, of course, being built on the Quake engine. It was in its first incarnation a sort of running, gunning, third-person shooter. And I don't want us to go too far down the path of it sort of becoming a puzzle, more of a puzzle console game and losing the action side of the action adventure puzzle sort of triad. So I do think we want to try to keep these controls as fast and accessible, for continued play through combat, weapon selection, all of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, the general point being, you can't move your character if you've had to move your thumb up to the D-pad.
Right.
So that just jumped out at me as a little error that is easily solved there.
Now, I also know that when we've presented this overview of console controls, there have been a number of comments, and I think I even saw some of them this morning from the PC Master Race asking that we not forget them when it comes to the design of interface and controls. And I think, I one of the questions I would have is that did Alice Madness Returns feel like it lost something in the translation to PC controls? Because, when we were developing it, like I know that early on, we were employing a fairly heavy mix of both PC controls, keyboard and mouse, and console controls during development. And one of the goals was to have a kind of parity. And so I'm curious to know if people felt like the PC controls got short-rift with Madness Returns. Is there anybody out there from PC land?
Yes, actually I did. And I didn't notice any problems with it. I've used both the controller and mouse and keyboard. Didn't bother me at all.
I prefer the
and
controller.
What's nice with PC though is you can choose what controller you like. So if you like PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo button controller, you can actually use it. So.
And when you play on PC, are you plugging a controller in, or are you playing mouse and keyboard?
I usually play mouse and keyboard unless it's a fighting game. Or Nier Automata. I think Alexander was almost in. I'm sorry to talk over you. One more time.
Was that her or Tay?
I think that was her.
It might have been me.
Yeah, it was you then.
Okay.
It might have been me. Didn't Madness Returns give you the option to reprogram your buttons for PC? Am I mistaken? It's been a minute.
I don't recall
I think it did,
that was in there, but...
or something like that.
I'm gonna say that most PC games nowadays allow you to rebind. I mean, that's kind of standard. I'd have to fire up the game.
Yeah. I'm looking here. People are complaining that keyboard bindings are not working over on Steam. I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, these are bug reports from back in 2014, it says people change the bindings, they try to save them, but it doesn't save and actually work in the game. I'm thinking maybe this was something we did eventually fix, but yeah, that's another comment that has come up from a number of people, is to ensure that for PC we did allow, remapping and binding. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just looking. There's
That
a
brings me
great
to a
website.
question too, though, because like how you have here for the DualShock, the movement with the L stick. If you lightly move it, she's gonna do a tiptoe. Move it a little more, she'll do a little walk. Move it all the way, she'll run. How would that translate a little more into PC? I mean, of course you're gonna hold shift probably to slow walk or tiptoe or something,
Yeah,
but then there's
that's pretty
crouch.
standard is
and, like,
having where you hold the key to dash or.
My question here though is, I don't like the crouch for circle and then rolling with double circle, because there's been some games where we've had that, and like some people don't always double tap circle to do a dodge, so they get she's like crouching
the whole time.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah, I
bugged
mean,
me.
I've run into that myself playing games where you don't realize that a certain button press has been overloaded maybe 2 or 3 times. So you're playing along for a while before you realize that, oh, if I had known, or if I'd followed along, that I could press that a second time or even a third time to get to to that next thing. So I think there's actually the first question you're asking about, how do we simulate analog input on a digital keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
The best we could hope for would be sort of holding down the shift key, and that then puts you into sort of the slow movement mode. Of course, if we've got 3 levels of, and it seems that he does. He's got forward, tiptoe gently. He's got regular walk, and then he's got run fast. So I mean, the other thing that it might require is sort of just a, say, W for forward walk, but a double tap on that goes to run. But a W plus shift is doing the slow walk.
Actually, that reminds me of, like, I think in Minecraft you double tap W and it gives you a dash.
To run. That's right.
Yeah, having run so easily accessible just by pushing up might be a bit annoying if you're just trying to like walk around somewhere like subtly. I'm trying to think.
You mean
of
on
any
the
of the
console?
games. On console, yeah.
Yeah.
It might be worth having a specific button for that. I believe that is the standard these days. Just casting my mind back to what I've been playing recently.
Yeah. Well, let's get back to this. So I think where we were was in the conversation between how to handle PC versus console controls when it comes to analog versus digital. And, I mean, I would have the same question about how we map out the console, buttons, where we have here, 3 rapid hits for a combo. Where does that stuff normally get mapped? The X, the O, the square, the triangle, when you're on a PC game.
Usually
jump
it's
is
mouse
the space
button.
bar.
Yeah, it's usually usually it's mouse buttons for that, and then from what I'm remembering, it's usually E or R for different keys. But again, it's most things are programmable. Like if you don't like how something's laid out, it's simple.
Right. So then probably the biggest issue here is going to be on the L3, just for movement. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yep.
and again, I think we've kind of already talked about is if there's just 2, we have the light, medium, full, which most of the time is just holding hard or then toggling, as Octave says, to crouch, or other aspects of having a toggle to run is how it's usually done. So.
Okay. Well, I think, as we said at the beginning, there's not a lot that's very so unless anybody has, well, there was one more thing, is that we don't have a touchpad on PC, but of course, touchpad, if it's connected to inventory, things like that, it's probably just going to end up being the escape key, something along those lines.
Yeah.
Function keys. Yeah.
That works.
Okay.
Is it
any other
something? I was just wondering. This is probably not a thing, but I'm just spitballing off the top of my head, would it like cause everyone's brains to explode if you had to use a controller on PC? What
I
if there
think that's an
was no mouse and keyboard?
I think it's a wonderful question. I would like to hear the answer to that, but I'm pretty sure the PC Master Race would revolt and burn our
Here's
houses
the
down.
thing with that, Martin, is most of the time for most ports, they just remap the buttons like the
keys.
controller to a key.
Yeah.
So for example, if you look under the hood, a lot of times it's okay, so for the X button is the Y key and etc. So it's not like it's not easy. Like as I said, I'll play fighting games on a controller on the PC, but it's just because they remapped everything to the controller. It's not like
Yeah.
they thought, here's how we're gonna do it on the controller first.
Also, I
Right.
know that if you pick up a PC game in ye olde game shop and it's in a physical box, I know that's probably before most of you were born, but a lot of times it'll say this PC game we recommend you play with an Xbox controller, or we recommend you play with it, right? In fact, they'll have the icon on the box that says this game is optimized to play with an Xbox controller. Now, when we were making Madness Returns, we actually, every PC in the office had an Xbox controller plugged into it. So I even think that Madness Returns had that. It might have had that on the box, like this is compatible with an Xbox controller.
Here's the grid layout for the PC for Madness Returns.
And while we're looking at that, also, Truth Decay asks a question. He says, so I've noticed that the controller scheme shows quote-unquote combos. Now, I tend to be a quote-unquote stream of consciousness when I'm playing games and only semi-aware what I press to accomplish things, but were there multi-button combos a thing in previous games? Yeah, I mean, as a simple one, if you pressed the spacebar to jump, or if you pressed the spacebar to jump multiple times or held it to glide, that would be what you might consider a combo. So yeah, the previous games did have combos, and they did have combos that were accessible on the keyboard as well.
But how about battle combos?
Well, there was Hobby Horse, Vorpal Blade. There were certain combos where you did switch weapons to get a better effect, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
The umbrella kind of worked with a combo too.
Yeah.
Love me.
I feel like you do have to be a bit of a keyboard virtuoso when I look at this anyway, and I get what Truth Decay is saying. I think it's one of those things where, we have to train the player up carefully to get them into the rhythm of those kind of combos.
Yeah. And going back to, as you're saying, American, on the game box, on Steam, I don't know about Origin, but it will say recommended with controller, or has controller support, or multiple controller support, or the level of support it has for the controller. So
correct.
That's pretty standard nowadays to see.
Yep. Yeah. Well, so we won't tell people you must, because that'll make the PC Master Race go mental. But we will say that it is highly recommended. And at the same time, just to be clear, we will not sort of downgrade or ignore the implementation of the PC mouse and keyboard setup. We'll make sure that is everything that it should be. Wendy says she's bred. I'm not sure what that means. But
okay. The game I Am Bread.
Oh, I Am Bread. Okay. So, yes, I knew someone was going to say that. Do we have anything else that we want to throw comments at in terms of these console controls V1? No. Okay. Well, again, for those following on YouTube, do go over to the wiki and check out. That was console controls V1 that we were looking at as an image. Nothing terribly controversial there. We're now going on to console controls V1. This is the Chaos Wheel Select UI. And again, this is on the wiki. The links are in the description below. So this is something that Alex has presented. Now, again, let's be really clear. All of this is for brainstorming purposes. Nothing here is set in stone. So he has suggested some weapons, which do not necessarily represent what will be in the final implementation of the game. And again, I think that the concept presented here is nothing terribly controversial. Depending on what game, games you play, you probably recognize this interface as the weapon select system, say from Doom, or I might recognize it from BioShock, and others might recognize it from host of other games. So we'll open this up to see what sort of feedback our insane children have. Who wants to start off?
Well, I'm thinking Alice will be in the dead center of the screen on this image. I'm just trying to think again to the games I've been playing recently. Are they kind of offset to the left ever so slightly? Are most games sort of like an over the shoulder as a directly behind the back? Which
Yeah,
would
actually,
feed in to, does the weapon wheel, is it off to the side so you can still see Alice?
I think we might have been a little bit off to the side in Madness Returns. I seem to recall this being a bit of discussion with. No, I'm looking at the screenshots. She looks pretty dead. Well, that's not true because when you got into combat, when you hit the lock on, the camera did move off to the side, and the reason why was because you wanted to be able to see the action. So when you were running, the camera was almost directly behind you. When you locked on, the camera tended to springy, rubber band connection to you, but kind of float around a little bit to give you a better perspective in battle.
Right.
So
I'm just trying to Google that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you take a look at some of the screenshots that are up, you'll see that anytime she's engaged in battle, whether it be melee or with a ranged weapon, I think the lock-on automatically pushed the camera somewhat to the side.
Yeah, I think.
But your concern is with regards to the menu coming up, yeah.
No, I think he's talking about the wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah, the menu
Well,
wheel. I did see somebody saying it should be off to the side somewhat, so it doesn't obscure the gameplay, since the gameplay should technically still be live while it's up.
I think everyone's posting different scroll wheels right now, so we have.
I like
Horizon
the one
Zone.
that's. Yeah, I like the one that's showing for Horizon Zero Dawn. That's kind of offset there. That's quite nice. I think one of the things that's nice about the offset is it does less to take you out of the immersion of the game than when something is planted right on top of the player, right in the middle of the screen. It's like that's the fourth wall. And when we do this as an overlay to the side, and the environment still has a kind of precedence in your visual field, then you're less taken out of the experience, I think.
And the games that we're talking about too, like BioShock, Dishonored, Doom, those are all first person. This is third person. And that's where Horizon Zero Dawn is. It's third person. So having it on the side, even if we adjust the camera a little bit to kind of shift it off, would probably be the best way to go about it.
I think so. Yeah. So maybe that's something we push to Alex to make sure that he represents that, because in the image that he has in the Chaos Select UI, he now has it coming up right on top of the player. So I think one of the takeaways from today is let's try to emulate more closely what's done in Horizon Zero Dawn, which is off. In that case, it's off to the right, and the player is still visible. He's also got a lot of sort of lens effect, blurring going on the background. I'd like us to avoid that. I'd like us to not be taken too far out of the experience of the game, if possible. Okay, any other thoughts or comments on this interface? Martin, I think this is where your concern about overlapping controls and input came in. Is that right?
Which one are we talking about? The left on the D-pad to bring the wheel up?
Yeah.
No, that was on the other screen.
Okay.
The other one, it was tucked away down at the bottom left in the other slide we were looking at. But yeah, it's the same thing. You have to be able to move the character while you're doing stuff, I believe, in this modern era of gaming. Just having the game stop dead is probably just going to take you out of it somewhat. I don't think we want that.
Yeah. Well, let's do maybe compile a list of the games we've all played recently where we particularly liked that interface, and try to avoid the ones where, obviously the reviewers like to come out and sort of crap all over the ones that do it wrong. So let's learn the lessons there and avoid that as well.
Well, as you know, I just recently finished Days Gone, so I can bring you that if you want. You
Ooh.
can have it at home.
Yes, that would be great. I would like Daryl Simulator.
I thought it
Yeah,
was Right to
Carol
Hell
Simulator.
Retribution 2, not quite as bad.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I would actually like to check that out now that I've finished watching all of the Game of Thrones episodes. Spoiler warnings, they
No.
all die.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
no!
All right. Okay, good. Is there anything else on this page, on the Chaos Wheel Select, that we think is worth a bit of debate?
What I would like to bring up is, this is going back to Dishonored, and if you take a look at the picture that I posted, is being able to remap the buttons. So if you like using the Vorpal Blade versus the Griffin Sword, you can move it to the top one or left and kind of remap it how you want to. That can be done in the menu.
Okay.
So I don't know how easy that would
Bioshock
be.
gave you that option too.
Yeah. So that way you get used to, like, if you have something you use often, you can, trigger that faster than
Yeah.
just, the side one. So having that customability, I think, is important.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm often frustrated by, sort of loser weapons that are mapped on the farther left side of the keyboard, like 1, 2, 3, 4. I can get to quite easily, but if those are weapons I don't normally use, it's annoying to have them stuck over there, taking up valuable space. So I think remapping, whether it be on PC or console, is definitely something we want to have.
Now, Wendy does bring up a good thing, though, about holding the D-pad while pressing the shift. So it would be, like Martin also said, it is taking your hand off the thumb, taking your hand off the thumb trigger to select something compared to moving around, I guess.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
That is something
So-
to bring about. It's just
Okay.
that's what I'm thinking. Is the Octo brings up, is pull the wheel by pressing it. I'm just trying to think of how I've seen it besides. I'm so used to
Don't.
PC, unfortunately.
Most games pull the wheel with pressing the L3 stick. I
Yeah,
don't think so.
But the way it looks is it's a press, and what I'm seeing on the design is it's a press the button and then hold, like it's a press and hold. Press directional D-pad button and R3 to switch from weapon, ranged, and all the different options. So I could be reading this wrong, though.
Maybe. Just looking at Greg's comment, he believes the wheel appears when you do a click of the left stick. I don't think I've ever seen that.
Me either.
Clicking the left stick has been to activate run, I'm pretty sure, in some games.
Yeah.
But I don't, yeah.
In
I'll have to look into that.
most games with like a wheel or some kind of choosing option, it'd be like L1 or something that you would hold down, at least on controller.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm holding the controller trying to figure it out.
Yeah, like hold L1 and then everything slows down and then you use the stick to, choose your thing and then get back into the game.
Yeah. Well, another thing for us all to keep in mind here is that we will certainly employ the crowd to test this stuff during development. So my expectation is that there will be small test build releases and that those controller implementations will be in there. And then there'll be a path whereby everyone can input on a survey, and that the design discussion for this can continue when we actually have these controls in hand. Of course, during development, you would be testing, say, your PlayStation or your Xbox controller by plugging it into your PC. We won't be putting out, I don't think we'll be putting out console builds at that time, but for sure we would be able to put out test PC builds, and then everyone can get some feedback on the actual builds at that time.
So we can get input on the input.
Exactly. Input. It's inputception.
At least someone got my joke. Thank you.
Any other comments here on Chaos Wheel Select UI?
I think everyone's in agreement. It's just, again, figuring out the finagles on it, but people like the wheel. Don't reinvent
Okay.
it.
Oh, boy.
It's been a long day.
So let us just really quickly. I'm going to just read a couple from a comment by one of our insane children, the Carbon Coast. He's got a couple of suggestions here. We'll see if any of this is relevant to the discussion we've had so far. He's
Couple of
talking.
suggestions.
Yep. He's saying that when all of this is brought up, we might get a bit of a translucent brain fog and also a bit of a time slowdown. Now, this is something Martin has mentioned multiple times with relation to how it's done in Days End. I don't think anybody has
Days
any.
Gone.
Days Gone, sorry. So I don't know that anyone has any objection to this. And I think,
so.
again, this is one of those things. Hopefully, we'll implement. We'll see how it feels. We'll see if it works. This is another suggestion from him. He's talking about that in that place you see a 3D model of each weapon in high detail. Yeah, I mean, we actually enjoyed modeling the weapons and having sort of a weapon and enemy showcase, and that's something we've talked about, having Alice carry around sort of like a notepad or a notebook, and then she's sketching, recording these things, and then of course we could show off in a sort of gallery both the enemies and the weapons. So I don't have any issue with that. He says that weapons could be laid out in a directional hierarchy, so basically categorizing them. I think this is just his concept of sort of visualizing how they appear on screen. And I think kind of a weapon inventory control space like that might make sense, and we might even link that into how the weapons are mapped, because this could all come back to the wheel. So, the wheel has the weapons are in 3D. Perhaps in some form of the UI, you could zoom into the wheel, you could inspect the weapons, you could move the weapons around inside of the slots, if that makes sense. And he's got sort of categorizing stuff going on in here. This starts to feel a little bit RPG-y to me, and I don't know that we're going to have enough weapons to require this sort of fine degree of categorization. I don't know how you guys feel, but I think this came up in a conversation previously, and that was maybe we should try not to have too many weapons. And I'm kind of on that page. I often think that the Doom model of games, that is single projectile, aka pistol, multi-projectile short range, aka shotgun, multi-projectile rapid fire, aka machine gun, right? You've got these fairly standard categories of functional weapons that we all enjoy, and then you reskin them. How does everyone feel about that? Like, how many weapons do you think Asylum needs?
Not too many. I mean, we've had like a basic 4 in AMR, right?
500, says Truth Decay.
Yeah. Just give us 10 so you can remap to each key on the number pad, then you're good. I think, truthfully, for the wheel, actually 8 works really well because it's each coordinal real fast. So
well, it also links into our chaos motif.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. True.
But again, I think having the ability to maybe where you can swap one of the weapons out if we have more than that, so it's not, as you're saying, if I don't like a weapon, I don't want it to be there. Yeah. So it's like, if I don't like the jackhammer weapon, I'd rather have the fish slap weapon.
Yeah, I agree. And we've also talked about recently, there was a bit of controversy around the idea of Alice carrying a chainsaw. And I had said that maybe that is done as a kind of, it's a bit of a hidden weapon, a secret weapon. So it's outside. Let's say we have 8. Maybe that is the 9th and secret weapon, or we might even have a collection of secret weapons. Sort of alternate mapping of another 8 weapons that are just complete silliness, like you just said, a fish that you run around and slap people with. But it's the fish of fury, and it instantly jibs them. Right. So. Okay. A couple more comments here from Carbon. He's just talking about how his system would help us quickly navigate the 4 most common weapons. Again, this kind of goes back to everything we've talked about here, which is the idea of remapping so that we can get access to the weapons we like best, and that happens more efficiently. He's basically just listing out the advantages to that system. I don't think anybody disagrees that that sort of remapping has advantages. And yeah, so a lot of what's said here is just him trying to market his idea to us. I think unnecessary, because I think we're all on the same page. But he does say that he forgot to mention that the entire system goes to a click R3 joystick modifier, so that you could still move in game while the weapon space overlay was on screen. So there you go.
There you go.
Yeah. So
Okay.
looking at, just quickly pulling up from American McGee's Alice, there was 9 weapons, and then from Madness Returns there was if you count the clockwork bomb, there was 5 or 6 if you count the umbrella as well.
Yeah. I mean, I often think that, less is more when it comes to this, that you don't want to clutter up a game with too many weapons. And I've certainly worked on or been involved with games where you do have like 30 or 40 weapons, and it sort of becomes a question of the variety between them. The differences are so small that it doesn't really make sense that you have that many weapons. So,
I mean,
You also had the ability. Go ahead.
No, you.
So in Madness Returns, you not only had the 4 weapons, but you had the ability to upgrade those weapons, which made it more like 12, because it did add a difference, and they did have their own unique designs.
yeah.
So you didn't really feel like you were missing out.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, that's the point, is to have it feel like there are unique designs. What kind of bothers me, say, 6 different machine guns that are all essentially machine guns, but one has a slightly larger spread than the other, and it's like, come on, I don't need 6 machine guns. Just tweak one variable by 1 point.
So here's the list I think you gave us of the general FPS weapon types, which I'm posting there.
Right.
In the chat.
Yeah, so I mean, if we take that list and we just really find ways to reskin those, then I think we're good.
We can just pull a Borderlands and have 1 billion guns.
Oh hell no.
What's the difference? What's the difference
1
between a marksman
billion.
gun and a sniper rifle?
Marksman gun is usually medium
Aim
range.
down the
Sniper,
sights. Right.
yeah, sniper rifle would be usually stuck and aiming down the sights. Where
Yeah,
it's kind of like
I'm with Ancient Child. I'm for a sniper rifle.
Yeah.
I'm a
it's always
secret
fun having
sniper gang item.
Yeah, I love like GoldenEye sniper rifle.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I think there's nothing really terribly on that page. We can probably move on if everybody's all right with that.
Yep.
So the next page we're looking at, again on the wiki, again links in the description below, is going to be for gameplay HUD and pause menu screens. So this would be what sort of information is displayed on the screen while you're playing and active in the game, and then the other one would be what happens when you push the pause button. And so Alex has provided some mock-ups for that, and it's sort of a good overview of the basics. A health bar, a mana/stamina bar, what sort of equipment we currently have, or what sort of gear we currently have equipped, aiming, Cheshire Cat, Hysteria Rage, that kind of good stuff. So any feedback or thoughts on this? Again, not terribly controversial, but anything you hated or loved in Madness Returns?
I like how simple they kind of have the rough mock-up here is. And now the reticle, though, would that be hidden, like, until you bring up a shooting weapon? Unlike in your first game, the little dot was always there. I never liked that in games. It's visually annoying.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not a big fan of it always being on screen. So I think we'll try to make, as we've said, you guys called it screenshot mode, but I'm a big fan of generally fading away when it's not in use anyway. So
yeah, having the UI just vanish is nice, as you said, screenshot or camera mode, or
Photo
I want to
mode,
make
yeah.
a music video out of it, or live stream.
right.
Well, again, that's the way things are going, isn't it, these days? Even on console, you have customizable HUDs. Like, what do you want to see?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
do you want to see almost nothing? Was
Yeah.
it Horizon Zero Dawn where you saw literally almost nothing until you touched the touchpad, and then everything popped up for like a few seconds before fading away again? I think it was Horizon Zero Dawn. Was
I
it God
think-
of War?
I think it was God of War. Maybe.
Yeah,
Right.
God of War was really nice in the fact that there was almost nothing on the screen until the moment you needed it. I mean,
Yeah.
it was visually, it was just beautiful to be able to, and it was in that world. You know, you felt like you were in the world watching a movie or something. It was incredible. So that's certainly the direction I'd like to go. I mean, if we had to kind of point at a game I've played recently that I thought we would want to copy in that sense, it would be God of War.
I know what they've been doing in photo modes in God of War, Spider-Man, pretty much all of them now. When you go into the photo mode and when you're prepping up the camera to do your screen choppers and stuff, you can make, change their faces, so their emotions and stuff. Would Alice possibly do that? Or like,
Huh. Really?
Yeah,
So they give you a button or a
they give you like a
Okay,
little
okay.
menu so that way you can like change it, make their face look angry, happy, sad, stuff like that, just to make them more posable.
Huh.
There's
That's
a lot
cool.
of mad stuff going on in photo modes. I
Yeah.
get really jealous of people who can like make really good photo modes, and they got like depth of field and everything and all the right angles, and I'm like, wow, they did that in game. And then
Yeah.
I try and it just looks like a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah.
It's-
Well, Omri has been sort of foreshadowing this in the fact that in a lot of the concept art he's done, you see Alice with a camera, with a phone, taking selfies. So I already think that this is going to be a big part of the game. Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad idea to have her able to pose, to have facial expressions, and not only that, but props. So I think one of the things we've seen and heard quite often is, oh, I want to be able to wear any dress at any time. Maybe one of the compromises to that is that in that mode, it doesn't matter what level you're in, she can actually go into a wardrobe. She can pull up faces, outfits, but that's only while she's sort of stood still in a particular place for posing. And then the moment you move away from that, all that sort of vanishes, right? So it's something that, yeah, we could definitely implement something like that.
Yay. And that's actually a really good idea too. Like a temporary change and then it goes back.
Yeah,
Yield
exactly.
selfie.
Yeah, that would be cool.
I
I
mean,
wouldn't have a problem with that.
If also actually narratively, if we're talking this is the older Alice looking back, she could say, hey, here's what I thought about, or maybe I could have done this, or I was feeling like this. Ta-dam.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's kind of cool. So we should make note of that. That it doesn't really matter where you are in the game, and maybe it doesn't matter if you even acquired that weapon or that dress. Perhaps this is on the second playthrough, or perhaps it's a cheat code or something. But enable the player to pull up any weapon, any dress, not the function of it, just the skin of it, any facial expression at any point in the game, and snap a photo.
oh yeah, you have to have found the weapon or the dress before you can use it in photo mode for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If not,
All
no one
right.
can see your pride and accomplishment of getting them.
All right, Killjoys.
I'm good at that.
Yeah. Well, let's scribble that stuff down. That sounds like fun. Any other thoughts on gameplay HUD, pause screens, all that kind of good stuff?
I think the next item we're going to go over
the
is going to bring
Benina.
up some hot topic, but let's hold off.
The Benina asks, any chance the environment characters would react or have special animations when the camera is pulled up?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, you could imagine that we could, if we took this, okay, so we're brainstorming, remember, we're brainstorming, but you could imagine that if you took this to its extreme, that camera, this mode, let's call it selfie mode, being pressed at any point, anywhere. I mean, imagine you're in the middle of a fight, and then, but you access that mode, and all the enemies stop, and everybody lines up, and they get ready for the photo shot. Everybody like, get in the picture. Yeah, get over here. Oh no, you go to the back. Okay, you're on the sides. Everybody takes a shot, and then when you undo photo mode, it all snaps back to the battle. I mean, that's obviously extreme. That's quite silly, but it would be kind of funny, though. It'd be kind of fun. So I think that's a good question to ask, though. And maybe it could be the kind of thing where there are places where photo mode, say, for instance, you did it in the presence of the caterpillar or the Cheshire cat, it does enable some sort of special behavior by those characters. So I think that's another kind of question to put next to this mode, like exactly how far do we want to take it? Yeah, Elena says that seems like a lot of coding and stuff. Yeah, that's why I'm saying it's brainstorming. I don't mean it to be literal. My brain hurts just to think about how we would make that function. But as an imagined extreme implementation, that would be pretty funny. It would be pretty cool. Now, if you were to suggest that to the animators and the programmers, they would beat you to death with a stick. So what's the sort of midpoint where that still is fun and is different and makes sense?
Just use a lot of if statements.
Yes.
Insomniac Let's Play has a good point of, let's remember this is the mind of a child.
Yeah,
so that gives us a lot to play with.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, in the mind of a child, she could just sort of charm the enemies into silliness from time to time.
Everybody smile.
Yeah.
Let's put a smile on that face of yours.
Well, and the beauty of, like Wendy says, she's a very, very broken child. Another thing to keep in mind in the context of PTSD is that the speed with which your mood can shift. You could actually be right in the middle of a battle against your demons and then find something inappropriately funny and then back to the depths of depression, all within the space of a few seconds. So that does give us some space in which to explore some ideas like this, and they're not going to be completely ridiculous. And the Ancient Child says there should probably be some non-serious things that save the mind of the player from all this deep stuff. Yes, that is one of our prime design sort of foundations, and it's, for me anyway, when we build these types of games, they cannot be all serious all the time, or we would be making very different sorts of products. This stuff is quite dark, and I don't think it does it justice to just represent it purely as dark all the time, because then there's not any joy in playing it or experiencing it. So truth to case is, I disagree. Grimdark all day, every day. All right, well, go blast some Cure in your headphones and jump out a window. There you go. What else do we have on this page?
We have the inventory map, etc., that I think caused a lot of issues. As I said.
That hot topic.
The hot topic issue, yes.
Okay. So we're moving on to next, inventory. Okay. So again, on the wiki, links in the description below, we are now at the last image on the page. This is inventory/map/etc. And this is an idea from Alex that is intended to represent a sequence of events/animation that would happen each and every time the player decides to pull up the inventory, dress select, level map, collectibles, and game status and information. And it is a multi-frame storyboard for what happens when you press that button. You're in your environment, the camera zooms in, spins around, dives into her eye, fades to black, plays some sort of a movie, plays the 4th episode of season 8 of Game of Thrones, and then drops you into the inventory screen. So I know there's a bit of reaction on this. Let's hear it.
Well, it's just this will take too long, won't it? Every time you want to go into the menu. I mean, it would have to be a really fast animation for it not to be annoying. Like, so fast that it's not even worth having.
And so, also the zoom around, I already can see people getting seasick from it. So it's like all right. But Ancient Child does maybe removes.
I was gonna say Ancient Child's comment should be something. Maybe remove step 1 through.
Yeah. I was gonna say. Just...
Yeah.
I mean,
well, I think the first time you see it, fair enough. You know, it's interesting. It's like, ooh, I'm in Alice's head. That's where the inventory is, whatever. But
Yeah,
after that, I mean, there's literally no reason that the camera couldn't still kind of like quickly zoom in to like the back of her head,
that's
do a
correct.
quick transition through some sort of paper cutout-esque fog before you
Yeah.
enter the inventory.
I don't know. I think
I mean, that
an
could
idea
take
that I
like half
had
a second.
was having it where you see her eyes close, like just it darkens enough, you kind of see the lids go down, and then it does the effect, the paper, whatever you want to do. So that's just quick. It shows you that she's going into herself, and then you get the menu.
So we're
So
going
you
in her
see her
head
eyes closed
inside
from
of
the
her
back.
head.
Yeah, you don't need to see your eyes closed. It's just visually the screen darkens. So it
Okay.
darkens as in you close your eyes, it goes dark, kind of like as you'd see your lids close in a game, as you know, does the weird eye shape that doesn't exist
Yeah.
in real world. But
So this
and then
yeah, go ahead.
no, and then just you see the paper craft or whatever you want to use to kind of move between the worlds. But I think that would be quick and easy and still creative.
Right. Well, so this brings up a great illustration of the constant battle between design and function. So, I mean, I'm sure you've heard that, you know, design over function or function over design. And we had this as an example on Madness Returns, where there's a lot of the movement that she does when you lock on, when you dodge, when you roll, where the animators had created tremendous amounts of frame by frame animation, or we had gone and done, say, for instance, motion capture, which generates tons of frames of animation. And then when they came back and they tried to implement all that in the game, you run into this battle between, well, hey, we have all this animation information and it looks fantastic on the one side. And on the other side is I just pressed crouch and it took her 2 seconds to animate getting down onto the ground to crouch, and now I'm dead because something hit me, right? And now fill in the blank with every single action, roll, dodge. If you were to play every animation that they had recorded, you know, every time, the game becomes unplayable. And ultimately, what we end up doing is just throwing all that away, and it created screams and howls of protest from the art team because it was like, you're throwing away our lovely animations. But if we had kept them in there, people would have been so incredibly frustrated with the slowness of interacting with the game that they would have just thrown it away. It would have destroyed the game. So I think it's important to always keep in mind that function almost always gets to win over form. We want things to be snappy. So I think that's the initial reaction to this is no, you know, it's press the button, the menu comes up.
Yeah.
I think though having this kind of idea would be interesting in probably an opening scene or like when you start the game itself. So that would be I'd
Yeah.
love to see it implemented somewhere, but yeah, every time you open a menu it would drive people mad.
There was
Yeah,
a
you know, it could be
game
done once.
that I played. I can't remember which one it is. It would do something similar to this, but kind of like how Martin said. Maybe like the first time, maybe you start up the game and you go into the menu, all this would happen, make it all flashy. But then after that, I think looking at this, just go like 1, 4, 5, 6, like quick and flashy, like crossfade to black, a little quick fire burner up, and bam, you're in the menu, quick and simple.
Well, we'll implement this, and I would be willing to bet money that you'll just want to go 1-6. But
Probably.
we'll see.
I mean, the 4 through
We'll
5
see.
would happen like half a second, just like whew, just a little flare.
Just,
Yeah.
well, the problem is you.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna make a
Or
joke.
just
Go
6.
ahead.
That's what they put.
Just
six,
six. I
I
think
was gonna
that
say the problem
Insomniac
is
player has it.
if you go to 4 too long, then you just end up playing Skyrim. You wake up and
That's the
Okay.
idea. It's not supposed to be long.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
a bad joke.
Well,
Okay.
again, this is one of those things we will implement, and we will also share the implementation of this. That's one of the things that, you know, as we move forward and we start building, there will be builds of the game, small pieces, small chunks that you'll be able to load up and you'll be able to play around with, and that will be a place where you can then provide feedback. And you know, maybe we will have an early goes 1, 3, 5, 6, and you'll all say, this takes too long, or, oh, this is great, but please shave a little bit off here. But I think as a starting place, this is definitely too complicated. So, we'll try to go for something a little more simplistic. Okay. Any other comments? Because it seems like we're all in kind of general agreement on this. Any other comments on the inventory map progress dress selector screen? Or any other comments on UI, UX as we've discussed it today in general? It's very quiet out there.
I'm reading.
I don't even hear the sound of a distant air conditioner running.
I can turn it back on if you want.
Well, why don't we just do a little aside here, and then we'll also do a bit of a wrap up. One of our insane children, Alexandra, who's been trying desperately to get into the chat, she's gone a bit off topic, but that's okay because we are at the end of the UI UX discussion. She has posted up some pretty awesome looking images. These are various emotions that Alice is feeling, from acceptance and slumber to bargaining and anger, and the dresses. And she's also done a couple of character. There's a star-nosed mole as a boss. He's disgusting. And there's a cool little singing bird box. And so yeah, thank you, insane child Alexander, for sharing those. Might be a good idea to post those up over on Patreon. There is a community tab for that kind of thing. And also,
Alice
if you talk
seems
with
to be in Bird Box in the denial pose.
does look like it. But there is a community tab, and then also when these things are relevant, when they fit into the design we're working on, or they inspire the design we're working on, you could also see these put up onto the wiki. I think can you post images into the comments on the wiki as well as text?
I don't
No.
believe so.
No, I'd have
Maybe
to
as
allow that.
thumbnails, but I don't know.
Right.
No, if they link it to, if they want, I'd recommend linking it up to Imager or another image host,
Yeah.
and that way they can just post the link into the wiki.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
an option.
Okay. So it might make sense, Alexandra, to share that stuff via the wiki, and then put links to the images in the comments that you put there as well, because there's some good stuff here for the enemies and for the singing bird box. That's pretty cool. All right. Any last or final comments for today's session? Otherwise, we will wrap up before Magus kills us all with his machine gun keyboard. No, okay. All right, well, this has been session number 11, episode 11 of our discussion for Alice Madness Returns. And of course, our insane children have been with us today via Discord. If you would like Discord access, please do consider becoming a patron. Everybody at $5 above over on Patreon gets Discord access. If you're watching this on YouTube, this is not a live transmission. I hope you've not been live chatting in the comments below. If you want to enjoy the function of live chatting, you should be doing that on Discord. I'm speaking directly to you, Brian Anderson, who left 40 live chat comments on our last design discussion. Please join us over on Discord, Brian, because YouTube is not Discord. Again, links to all of the community ideas and suggestions are down in the description below. That will take you to the Alice Asylum Wiki, where you can read all the progress we are currently making on the design Bible for Alice Asylum, as well as see all the suggestions that have been made by our insane children. I think that's about it.
One last thing to plug. If you get signed up at $15 before the end of the month, before the 1st, you get the nice Asylum tag.
Oh, that's right. There's a very cool inmate tag for this month at $15 or more. So do consider signing up for that. Thank you for the plug there, Magus. Alrighty, guys. That's it for today. We will not be back next week because my mom is coming to visit China for the first time ever in her life.
No.
And so I think that we're going to be doing a little bit of taking her around to tour the sights and sounds of the Middle Kingdom. But we will be back, I think, the week after that. So everybody have a good rest of the day or night, wherever it is that you are. And yeah, we will see you again soon. Bye
See
bye.
you all later.
Take care.
Thanks for
Bye,
joining us.
everyone.